All right. Should be we should be live. We'll kind of slow roll it, letting people get in here.
Come have you check out some Swimbait info.
Yeah, so we're gonna pick Gaff's mind on swimbaits. There's been a lot of people talking about swimbaits lately, and I know you have a lot of practical experience and you have a lot of passion about it, specifically to Minnesota.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be, probably spend some time focusing on your experience for the people that, there's a lot of shows about all these guys down in North Carolina and Alabama and the West Coast and all that kind of stuff. And that's good information. There's a lot of good things, but I think there's some nuances that can be applied to what we're doing here in Minnesota and the upper Midwest that might help a specific niche of people, even, specifically, and maybe help them catch a few more fish.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the stuff we'll get into once we get a few people in here.
Sounds good. Works for me.
And then I kind of have some ideas about maybe some dream lists or shopping lists. So I know we've got some baits that we're going to show and baits we'd like to throw and baits we've had success with. But eventually I'd like to talk about some baits that we have on our wish lists and our want lists. And we can maybe browse some web pages and talk about some of those and why we want those.
I'm a fan of that. Looks like we got a couple guys here now.
Yeah.
White Whale, how's it going? Welcome to PB Dad.
Yeah, PB Dad, White Whale. White Whale's got his own YouTube channel. He does some cool stuff on his channel as well.
Awesome.
So, all right, we got a handful of people in here. We got
Awesome.
So today I have Erik Gaffron, Great Lakes Gaff, with me. He's kind of a young and upcoming angler. We'll get into a little bit of his background before we dive deep into swim baits. But I guess we've kind of known each other through social media for a while, but we really didn't get to know each other until we fished a tournament together in Alabama in Guntersville as the Minnesota State team, and we got to kind of meet each other a little more. I got to get a little bit of a hint of kind of the swim bait nut that he is.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to tap into tonight. And so for those people kind of pouring in right now, we're going to dive in and really pick Erik's brain because I want to get better. This part of my goals for this season is to catch more fish on big baits, get better at big baits, get some of those sweet catches on film for the channel. And so I won't be taking notes, but eventually I'll be taking notes, and I'll probably go back and rewatch this and re-listen to it and take those notes at that time. So I think there'll be some great information no matter where you live about swim baits.
Yeah.
But if you're in the Midwest or in the northern part of the country, I think you'll get some specific nuggets that may even help you more than generic stuff. What's up, Brian Holder? So with that being said, I'll let you kind of give just a minute or two on yourself, Erik.
So, hi guys, my name is Erik Gaffron on Instagram. My handle is Great Lakes Gaff, like we said. I'm a tournament fisherman from here up in Minnesota. I'm about 25 years old. I started tournament fishing when I was 16, when the high school events were like in their infancy, and some of the earlier years of the college events, I spent some time traveling down south and getting experiences in Missouri and Kentucky and Illinois and La Crosse, Wisconsin, and applying different things that I learned throughout there and bringing them back here to Minnesota, and just doing different techniques through trial and error. Like every single person who bass fishes, I've just kind of learned to apply some of the things you hear about down south into the tournament techniques I was doing up here in Minnesota. And it's come with some pretty good successes and some bomb days, but I mean, that's tournament fishing, especially with big baits. But it's something that I kind of fell into my lap early on and just took off with now. So
nice. So maybe let's start, usually when somebody gets into swim baits, there's like a catch or a defining moment or something like that. Like what is you got to have some kind of a story, or maybe a couple, or you one or two, or like something.
I can remember the first tournament I ever threw a swim bait, but I gotta back up before we get to that point, because I started throwing a swim bait in little ponds, and initially what it was actually like a swim jig, but I was throwing on too big of a trailer. I didn't know anybody to cut down the trailer so they'd eat the whole thing, but I was getting more tail kick and thump. And I kind of realized, oh, there might be something to this. About the same time, I found Lynn Dollar's YouTube page. If you guys don't know about Lynn Dollar YouTube page, go on there. But there's all kinds of old Bassmaster shows. I was learning techniques. Bassmaster was posting shows. And some of those events where they went down south to like Texas, like Amistad, you know, the one Derek Remitz one? That one, I think Ike was throwing a swim bait out deep on trees. And I remember watching that and just going, man, there's no way they eat this giant thing. And of course they eat it, and he's catching 8, 9 pounders. And I kind of was like, man, I can't ever see that like working up here in Minnesota. I think about the same time, was it Chris Lane who won the Classic?
Yeah, he won in Louisiana on the Red River, I think.
And I think he was throwing like a grass pig style swim bait up shallow for some of his fish. If I remember. Possibly. Maybe it was just a swim jig with a grass pig on the back, but that was like the first bait. And I actually have one rigged up because I was thinking about this.
Sure. So
I got paired with Kent Middlestead. You know Kent. In a club event back when I was in Viking Bassmasters. And I had a Texas rig on, and I had bought a bunch of grass pigs, and we were fishing up shallow in reeds. And I had a grass pig with like a 3/16-ounce bait on it, and just flinging it around out the back and catching fish on it. And Kent kept looking back at me as I'm setting the hook on these fish. He's like, "You've got like 10-to-1 bites on this little gas pig." So he started throwing the like smaller swim baits too. And after I saw that day, it was something I had to apply different ways. I started looking around, experimenting, started hearing about some of those bigger swim baits, the line through, the optimum baits, all that kind of stuff. And I think when I got to college, that's when it took off the most. So is that we started going south, and those guys have big baits. I actually have this is like an Ignites baits with a big head on it. The first big swim bait I ever bought right there. It's actually the biggest swim bait that I ever have bought, because here in Minnesota, you don't need quite anything past 6 inches most of the time. There are some times where I think you could get away with an 8, 10, 12-inch swim bait, but I fish out of the back a lot as a co-angler, so a lot of the time is spent throwing something smaller. And I mean, a 6-inch, mag draft is not necessarily smaller than what the guys in front of me are throwing. But if I was up front, I'd be throwing the 8-inch. But I throw the 6 behind the guy who's throwing a jig or, a spinner bait or a swim jig, just because I think that some of these fish just don't see it ever, and throwing it.
I would say that I kind of follow some of that. Like getting into that, I definitely started increasing my swim jig size trailers, going to Gambler, the big easies, some of the full size paddle tails on the back of swim jigs and vibrating jigs, and found that they did produce a different kind of bite. They would draw strikes that other times maybe a grub or a small trailer wouldn't. So I agree that that's definitely a good stepping stone or a gateway drug, is just upsizing a swim jig trailer and throwing like an easy swimmer, or some of those slightly bigger paddle tails on the back of a swim jig, or even like a true bass, or like the 5-inch, the 5-inch, right, paddle tails,
5-inch or
bellies. That's a good place to start. And I think if you start getting bit on that on swim jigs as a trailer, that starts to give you the confidence that you can start to move up. I mean, there's another whole train of thought that they just most guys will tell you, don't mess around, just go to the big stuff. They have more drawing power, they get the bites, that you'd be surprised at the size of fish you catch. But mentally, sometimes that's difficult to do. Yeah. Just like when I first started fishing a jig, it took me a while to really gain confidence into a jig, even though the jig's really not much different than a creature bait. When I first started out, it was hard to make that leap. So whatever you need to do to get there, that's the important thing. What's up, Chad? What's up, Kenny? Whatever it is, find your path to swim baits. Whatever it is, if you have confidence to just picking a 6, 8-inch bait up and just giving it a whirl, then do it. That's probably the best way to do it. But if not, there's a stepping path as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, White Whale. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, White Whale. So and about the same time that I started getting into swim baits, I also kind of got introduced to the finesse swim bait. I think it's kind of hand in hand. I actually throw them one too sometimes. I'll have a finesse one on a spinning rod, and I'll have a big one lined up on a bigger rod. Years ago when we were here, I did that. I've done that on plenty of tournaments and club events and stuff, but I think being able to do it at the same time was something that was good for me, because I would be like, okay, well, I figured out how to catch them on this little one, so I can apply the same principles that got me bites on the little one to the big one and maybe trigger that bigger bite. And I think a lot of people throw a finesse swim bait or a smaller 4-inch or less, paddle tail swim bait, but not a lot of guys are throwing that big 5-6 inch one with the heavy kick.
So, Bess, do you have a story about either a fun fish or a tournament catch or something like that that was really like that cemented it for you with a real swim bait?
Well, I mean, there's been definitely days or like mid to late spring, like late spawn, post spawn, where I've just been fun fishing and just got into them really good with like a mag draft or something. I'm trying to think. I think that day with Kent that I was talking about earlier, that really solidified it, because it was a big stepping stone, but it made me see that even though I wasn't catching the biggest fish right there, it was like these little ones still get bites. I just have to step it up to get the big one. I haven't had like a full tournament bag come from a swim bait, but I've had key kicker fish come from a swim bait plenty of times.
Nice.
Definitely up shallow on Pekegama, I caught a couple fish on a kicker to qualify me for that regional team in the pads, throwing a cane thumper type of deal or a pit boss type of deal. I'm trying to think. I think I had one in club last year that ate like a 5-8 Kitech on a what's it called? A screw lock weighted hook like I have on this one.
So you got a big Kitech there?
I do have, I don't have one rigged up, but I have 4-inch. Actually, I do have one rigged up. I lied.
You have the 5?
I think I have. Yeah, here's a 5. This is actually one that's still rigged up from Gunnersville last year.
Yeah, so that's a pretty meaty.
Yeah.
Like that's a good place to like start to bulk up. That 5.8 Kitech is significantly bigger than the 4.8 as far as the profile that it has. So that's a good way to like just. I mean, I think they make a 6. Do they make a 6.8 now or something?
Yeah, they do. I have one here. Hold on.
They come like 1 per pack in the clamshell, don't they?
It's 2, I think. But here's a 6.8. Here's the 5.8, and I can't.
Yeah. Do you have like a 4.8 or a 3.8, like something that people would normally throw just to show them like what the size difference is?
I have this one is 4.3, which is pretty common. So here's the big one. Here's the 4.8. And then I've got even smaller here. I think I have a 3.8 here. Yeah. Maybe.
So like there's the 3.8. Like come a little closer, a little higher when you're holding it up.
Yeah, let me grab a different 3.8 because I put my 3.8s in the wrong box. Here's a 3.8. I made a mistake when I started putting swim baits in boxes. I didn't listen about keeping them in the packaging. That's a good tip in general. I think it makes a difference, at least on some of those bigger ones. But here's a 3.8. Here's the big one.
Come a little closer, a little to the screen, a little higher. There people can see, like, there you go. Like, if you're used to throwing a 3.8 on the back of a swim jig or a chatterbait, just to give you a difference, like that 5.8 is another magnitude.
Yeah.
And the thing is about a 5.8 Kitech, you can throw that on a jig rod.
Yeah.
Like, a heavy, medium heavy to a heavy like jig rod is all you need for a Kitech. And then do you typically rig those on jig heads or more like a beast type style hook?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your preference, or when would you rig, or what?
So I will rig the beast hook when there is like grass patches and whatnot, whether it's lily pads or coontail milfoil mix or like in 4 or 5 feet of water with some space above it between the top of the water and the top of the grass. Then I'll get the belly hook because that's going to pull it down into the water a little bit onto those stocks, and you can rip it out of the stocks. That day I was with Kent on Gunnersville, and I was throwing a swim bait. I was ripping it through the grass like that with a belly weighted hook. I noticed that when I have a top rigged one, like the one I'm about to pull out, like this one, that one is gonna snag up in the grass a lot more. And this is the one that I'll throw when I'm on like rocks or deep humps or even a deep weed line, because that grass usually isn't quite as thick, I'm learning. Then I'll go ahead and throw this one. And this one's a 1/2 ounce head. I think this is an old Buckeye head. But usually I just use the Owner Beast hooks, the screw locks. I like those a lot. I think they're a really quality one. So
what size beast hook do you typically throw in a 5/8 Kitech?
I have it written down because I don't want to dig through my. On the big 6-inch mag draft and like the bigger Kitechs, I'll throw the 6/0 1/4 ounce beast hook or the 8/0 depending. But then I'll also throw. They have a smaller one in the smaller size. I think it's a 5/0. I have to pull it up here. But I pretty much just match the weight to the bait and match the hook size to where, like if you've seen Kitechs, I know, Rich, but for those of you who don't know, there's a little groove right there. I don't know if you can see it. You want your hook to be right in the middle of the groove so that that bait goes back and forth and wiggles properly. If you put that hook in the wrong spot, or you put a jig head hook that's too long on here, I've learned, you'll kill the action, and it's not the same. So it's a matter of figuring out where that bait wiggles in the water.
Yeah, that's a good point. That visual, A, tells you you're using a big enough hook, and B, that you're not too big of a hook, and gives you a visual. So Fishing Today says, I don't have stuff to throw. I prefer like a big Storm swim bait. And actually, those old Storm Wild Eyes are sneaky good baits. And there's a lot of guys, those have a cult following. I know like the guys at Dream Smasher, that's what they used to throw a lot and catch a lot of big fish on those. So don't sleep on those old Storm swim baits, even though they don't make them anymore. And I think Bobby Lane was using those when he won a Kentucky event. So like, yeah, those old Storms, they get rid of baits all the time that are really good baits. So nothing wrong on those big Storms.
Yeah.
Sycamore Outdoors says, I'm using a 5/8 Peacock Falcon pole to cast these lures. Is that okay? It seems a little short.
You might be able to get the 3/8 or the 3/3, but you're not going to get the width you really want.
I think you definitely want to be a 7-foot plus rod for any of these bigger swim baits to have the leverage and to be able to move the line and the fish on a hook set.
Yeah. Only time I would ever think about going shorter is if I was like throwing a 3/8 around docks, like I would be skipping a jig or something. And even then, I'm probably going to go with the 7-footer, a 704 or something like that. Actually, most of the time, when I'm throwing a swim bait, I'm throwing a 7.4. I got 2 cadence from a guy secondhand, and they're pretty much going to be my 2 swim bait rods this year, I've decided. So one's a 744, and that's for like 3/8 to 4/8 Kitechs, and then anything above that, all the way up to the regular mag draft, not the freestyle one, I'll throw on the 745, and then I'm going to bump up to a 795 Fury for these freestyles. And if I ever decide to pick up this old ledge bait here, then I'll throw it on that. But that hasn't seen water since Kentucky Lake. So
yeah. So you're saying for like 6-inch mag drafts and down, you're throwing basically a 7.4 jig rod.
Yep, pretty much.
And then when you go to the 8-inch baits, that's when you're picking up your actual swim bait.
Yeah.
795 Fury.
6-inch freestyle too, because the freestyle has that big stouter hook. Because it's such a thick hook, you need such a rod to drive the hook on that bait. So
you're saying even the 6-inch with the beast hook, because you have so much plastic to go through. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And line preference on these rods, are you throwing fluorocarbon, mono, braid? What's
so for if I have it belly weighted and I'm going to be around like a lot of grass and pads, I will throw it on braid. So I'll use a fishing line, black braid, 40 pound, and that stuff is really good. And then if I'm gonna throw it around like sparse vegetation or skip docks with it, I'll actually switch to the fluorocarbon. I like skipping docks with fluorocarbon, so I throw 18 pound line brand fluorocarbon. So that's this stuff right here. So just like that, and then also a bump up to the 21 pound fluorocarbon that they have for the big heavy mag draft freestyle, or that super long Kitech that we have right here. This is the really big one. So if I'm not throwing 40 pound braid in the grass, or even I'll throw it like on a frog rod almost if the grass is thick enough, and I'm throwing that big freestyle up in the grass, up in some of that thicker stuff, then I'll jump it up and throw that bigger one with the 60 pound braid.
So I think I agree. Like, so if you're throwing, for the most part, 6-inch baits, so like 6-inch mag drafts, 6-inch paddle tails, the 168, you wouldn't talk about glides or anything, but the river to sea, that kind of stuff. You don't need any special rods. You can use your jig rod. You can use your frog rod. Like, if you really get into it, you may want a slightly different rod, but you definitely can get by on that kind of stuff.
And honestly, I only bought the $7.95 Fury because I'm probably going to try and throw some glide baits this summer. I've been watching a lot of videos on it over the winter, and I think that it has a place in Minnesota and certainly can catch some fish, but it kind of didn't get on my radar until late last fall. So once I started diving into that, I'm like, man, that's got to be the deal. You can get, smallmouth to flash on it. You can get largemouth to flash on it, catch them other ways. I think that's a really useful tool. Yeah.
White Whale says he uses braid to mono for his plastics. I don't know if that means like the boot tails, and then he uses straight mono on glides. So there's definitely a lot of different opinions on that. I know a lot of guys that like 20 and 25 pound big game for all their swim baits. I know guys down south that swear by straight braid. I know a lot of guys that go straight fluoro. So I really think you got to figure out what works for you, what you're comfortable. There's upsides and downsides to all of them. Mono is probably the toughest and the most resilient and the most forgiving. You are going to have stretch, and it's going to make your baits ride a little higher, especially with that big, heavy, like 20, 25 pound mono. But it's super abrasion resistant. It's super forgiving to shock as far as breaking off or backlashing or like casting. So that's the advantages, and it's cheap. And then braid, obviously the strength is really great. But when you get wind knots or professional overruns, aka backlashes, if you catch a fish and like the line pulls in on it and you go to make that next cast and it catches, that braid will catch sometimes, and then you'll have sometimes a very expensive bait going a really long ways that you may never see again. So that's the danger of braid. So I think if you're going to go braid, go heavy, go 65, go 80, so you really prevent that dig-in phenomenon.
I agree.
And then fluoro is kind of halfway in between. Still good abrasion resistance. You get a little more sink out of the line. You still have some stretch. It's pretty forgiving. It's kind of a nice balance between them, I think. It does wear out a little faster. You do have to kind of retie more often than you put with mono or braid. So just personal preference, I think.
Absolutely. I think it's personal preference. I only really go to like a fluoro braid leader situation if I'm drop shotting, fishing a deep weed line, or like pitching up shallow. If I'm throwing a moving bait, I don't want that not going through the guide. I know those FGs are pretty incredible and they seem to be just fine, but I have a hard time tying those. Unless it's like I sit down and watch a video and do it, no matter how many times I've done it. So for me, I go straight one or the other, depending on how much grass is present, how thick the vegetation. And if I'm going to go braid, I'm probably going to, I said 40, but 65 seems to come out more often than not if we're going to need it.
Yeah. I would say finesse swim baits on spinning rods, I'll definitely do the braid to fluoro, but on real swim baits, I'm not messing around with that at all. So I would say that like for 6-inch and smaller baits, line size can make a difference.
Yeah.
When I think you get to 8-inch baits and above, the fish don't care. Those,
No, they don't.
you know, at 6-inch and below, the line can affect the bait to some degree.
Yeah.
At 8-inch and above, the bait has enough mass that your line is not affecting it, I don't think. And when you're throwing an 8-inch bait, that is commanding the fish's full attention. Like, he does not care about the line.
About what else
he is focused on the 8-inch, the 10-inch, the big bait. So the bigger the baits, the less you need to worry about the line. You just go big or go home. Chad wants to ask you, what's up with that line?
So Line Brand Fishing Line is a company owned by Sam Moore, who runs also Sam Moore Media. He's done some work. He did a really cool video for Dio at the Classic this year. I fished against Sam in college. He went to Bemidji State, and I went to University of Minnesota Duluth. We fished against each other. We stayed at cabins together. I hung out with him and the Swanson brothers a lot of times. And lately, he's been pushing this company, and it turns out he owns Line Brand, and it's a high quality product at a lower price point. So his whole thing, especially when we were in college, and I remember him saying this when we were staying together, was stuff like, man, I don't understand why this stuff is so expensive, and if you want good quality stuff, you have to pay that top dollar. So his thing was, I'm going to start a line company, and I think he's got a couple other things in the works, but I'm not sure where those are at. But line is the thing he's focusing on now, and he wanted it to be an affordable, quality line that people can get at a really fair price point, but are really getting something that I mean, I'm using it right now on my swim baits, on my drop shot. It's sensitive. He's got a different take on how the market should be, and I think that's really cool. But it's really good stuff at a really good price. So I've been really happy with it. I started using it this season, early in the season, and just have been very, very, very happy with it. It's just as sensitive as anything I've ever used. I'm not breaking the bank on it. So it's been pretty nice for me, and it's been pretty good, I think, for him. It sounds like he's got a lot of people who are trying it out and liking it and giving him good feedback. And I know he's talking about getting a no fade braid coming up in the future. It's on the way. So, I mean, I really like his braid that he's got right now. So I'm excited to see how that can be improved with no fade. So, but yeah, it's Sam Moore's company, and he's doing a great job with it. I'm happy to be in contact with him.
Nice. So Jack K wants to know, do either of us throw big baits for smallies? And he said he's been messing around with the S-Waver for brown ones.
Yes. I still cap it at 6 inches for smallmouth. Even when you're getting around those really big 4, 5, 6 pounders, they don't have that big of mouths. But I will throw the big bait pretty much any lake as long as there's more than a 2-foot visibility. And most of these smallmouth lakes have plenty of visibility. If I don't get them to commit to the bait, I've seen plenty of them follow it up and point me to where the rest of the school is, so you can catch them on a jerk bait. You can catch them on sometimes a tube or a Ned rig or whatever, but they get those smallmouth. That lure is not just a tool to catch those smallmouth. It is a tool to find those smallmouth and help you locate their school.
Yeah, I know. When you're talking about that, are you talking about like glides, hard baits, soft baits? What are you talking about?
I'm usually throwing like my biggest soft bait, big 6-inch mag draft, or sometimes the 8-inch mag draft. I'll get up and do that. I'm going to start experimenting with the glide on smallmouth this year. I think the S-Waver is a great one to get them to, flash on your lure and help you see where a school is. I think, I know like Carl Jochumson's talked about it a lot, but based on what I've seen, what I can tell from glide baits and some of that underwater footage from like Tactical Bassin, that stuff kind of has swayed my opinion about will they really react to that glide bait. And it's a tool not just to catch them, it's a tool to find them. And I think that's an important thing to remember when you're throwing those big lures. Yeah,
and I think if you're fishing smallies, it's better to use a rig, whether you're talking a mag draft but something with treble hooks. Like,
yes.
More often than not, like it's really hard to catch smallies. Like you can catch them on like a 4-inch paddle tail or a 5-inch paddle tail with like a belly weighted hook. But
Like a Golden Eye Swimmer or something.
Jig head hook. But I think once you get up in that 6 inches above, you really should be looking at either the mag draft with the belly hook, or you should be looking at hard baits like glide baits that have treble hooks, because I've even seen it like I know Dave Sindrich would throw a reel prey on the river, and he would use that belly hooked reel prey, and just the way smallies attack a bait, you get a better chance of hooking them with some kind of a treble or a belly hook, I think.
Yeah.
So that would be my 2 cents on smallies.
Seem to be a little more swipey at the bait, if you will. They're making a pass at it as opposed to, I don't know, largemouth seems to just want the whole thing and take it all down and crush through it. I know, I mean, I've had smallmouth push the bait plenty, but they absolutely do swipe at it, and you'll see that flash.
Yeah, I think like that 6-inch glide bait is the perfect place to start with smallies. And if you're in a place with really big smallies, you can experiment with bigger ones too. But I think a glide bait is definitely a good way to go. There are some other good swim baits as well.
I got a point. Justin Sandy and I used to fish together in college. I would actually throw that 6-inch Huddleston in a couple places, and I'm not going to say where because they're on a lake that he and I have been on, and he doesn't want people to know secrets on. So I'm going to keep that away, but I just had to acknowledge that comment because he and I fished together in Kentucky and La Crosse, Wisconsin. But yes, that 6-inch Huddleston that Rich is holding, there's certain situations, primarily on a lake that has very, very big bass and a lot of forage. But post spawn, I'd probably go chase them down on a hump somewhere or something. But I do think a Huddleston has a place in Minnesota.
And there's a couple different variations of the HUD, since we're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, there's the top hook HUD, which is probably the more common HUD. See that, right? Like that's a good bait. A lot of times in Minnesota, when we have so much grass, I'm a big fan of the weedless HUD. The hookups are maybe not as good, but it's basically like a hollow-bodied swim bait with a hook, like a frog with a swim bait. And so I don't know if you guys have seen the weedless HUDs, but I've had really good success early and late on HUDs. You could slow roll them. I think a HUD is an absolutely great bait from like upper 50s and below, both in the spring and the fall. You can catch them all year long, but they really excel. That wedge tail on it. And I think I don't have any 8-inch HUDs, but the 6-inch HUDs definitely draws a big bite and catches. You can catch 2-pounders on it. And they have Radel Fall 5 and Radel Fall 12 and a couple others. Those are the 2 most common. Actually, some of their older HUDs actually they've kind of removed this now. Mm-hmm. There used to be a little a place to rig a stinger hook or rig a treble hook on the belly. They took that out because, and this is true, because people would, rig kind of a little heavy braid or a wire twist and then tuck treble in their pec fins or their anal fins there. Mm-hmm. But that creates a situation where the fish get tongue hooked or throat hooked a lot. So they removed that, and now the new HUDs do not have that. So
gotcha.
The better way to hook a stinger for the fish is to actually run it down the back, off that hook or off the eye or off the hook, and then tuck it back behind that dorsal fin. So for me, I mean, you can catch them anytime, but I think it's early and late in the season is the best time for HUDs, in my opinion.
Chad, Chad, you know which lake that is too, and you can message me later. I will direct it to you, but there's too many people on that lake already, and I don't need them throwing that to it. So,
you can slide in the minutes later and let me know.
Yeah. hit me up on Instagram.
Just slide into at Great Lakes Gaff. You can slide into his DMs on Instagram.
Absolutely.
If you want to harass him there. The Butch Brown rigging method for sure. So I guess let's to me there's like 3 basic types of when we're talking big baits. Mm-hmm. It could be, I guess I would say 3 or 4. So I would say you got your paddle tails. Yeah. Right. Your soft bodied paddle tails is like a big category. 2 would be, I guess I'm telling you, you got your hard baits, which could be glides or it could be like swimming baits. Yep. Right. And then I would say you got weight baits. And I would say rats and wake baits could be kind of a combined category. You can break it into a lot of subcategories, but that's kind of now. So let's say 4. I would say soft boot tails. I would say glide baits. I would say hard swimmers, and then I would say wake/rats.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's a good point, because within each of those categories, there's like, of course, a million subcategories. And I've only really taken a hard look at the paddle tail soft body world. And I've been trying to expand into the glide bait, but I've seen a lot of wake baits and a lot of small wake baits, but then also a lot of those big swim bait style, rat style that you talk about. And it intrigues me, but I haven't gotten that far yet, and I think it's just one of those things that I'll eventually get to chase some of those bigger Minnesota bass.
Yeah. So White Whale says, I could see a 6-inch Hud perch do well in Midwest.
Yes.
I agree. But here's one thing that I've come to notice about swim baits. Don't get hung up on matching the hatch.
True.
Just anything that looks minnowy, like shaddy. Even we don't have shad in Minnesota, but anything that, I mean, like even this IU color is a good color in Minnesota. It's more about showing them a big T-bone that they can see. I would say so. It's really just like in darker waters, you want something that's maybe a little brighter, a little more solid colors, and maybe in super clear water, you want something that's slightly more translucent, more ghosty. Don't get hung up. Big bass will eat a trout colored bait in Minnesota, even though most of our lakes don't have trout. They'll eat an IU. They'll eat, there's carp, there's shiners, there's a million bullheads. There's so much stuff they can eat. Don't get hung up. And if it gives you confidence to get a perch or a baby bass or a sunfish, albeit, but just because, like, don't wait for the bait that you think is the perfect for where you live because it's sold from a pack warehouse. Just don't get too caught up. Like, have shades of colors. Don't get too hung up. This isn't like a jerk bait or something they're getting a really good look at. They're just kind of like they're committing to the size and the motion, I think, more not.
Yeah, they're all pretty close in color, I would say, all the ones that I buy. Some have a little more chartreuse in them. Some of them have a little more gray in them. I'm a big believer in kind of the match the weather conditions, especially with if it's bright, maybe I want that more silver or more chartreuse, depending on the watercolor bait. But if it's dark, I want maybe that not as vibrant gray, or maybe something like you said that's a little more translucent. Let me pull up. I got a box.
I just say somebody commented about the 68. I don't have any 68s, but I really would like to get a 68 HUD for sure. Yeah, that light trout, and you'll hear the guys at Tackle Bass and just like scream up and down about how great the light trout is. It looks like nothing in the water, but they can see it and it makes them attack, right? Like,
yeah. I haven't thrown the 68 yet either. When we get into our dream list, I might be adding that one. So
yeah. Bill says, I started the glide bait saying I started heavy caught. I've not caught anything on it, but I've actually caught glide bait fish in the past.
Okay.
So this year I haven't been out a ton, and I feel like we're just about to get into glide bait season. Any day now where they really should start eating. I mean, not saying you can't catch them before, but we're kind of hitting that prime time where the glide bait should really pick up. Honestly, when I was out with Bill a couple weeks ago, I probably should have been throwing a HUD, and I didn't make the switch. That would have been we were catching them kind of slow rolling chatterbaits through the grass flat, and I definitely should have thrown a HUD there because the water was in the mid to upper 50s, and that would have been probably the right selection. Oh
yeah, I think they would have ate that for sure.
Or just any kind of paddle tail, any of those would have been good.
I'm going to be getting some glide baits very shortly, and I know it's coming. It's about that time for them to start chasing that stuff up and hopefully eating those big glide baits. I'm excited to see them, flash on it and show themselves and see how they react to it. I don't know why, but for some reason watching that fish behavior, like, I don't know if you've seen the Garmin Live Scope, but I've been on boats with it already, and watching it on that and watching it in real life are pretty similar, and it's insane. I just like watching that behavior, and that glide bait's like a jerk bait, but I think that bigger presentation post spawn makes a big fish bite. even if they're lethargic in post spawning. Not
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple other of my soft baits that I have. One is this osprey. It's the tournament osprey. It's kind of your standard jig head hook. Kind of got it in kind of a translucent color. Looking forward to throwing this maybe more this summer. This is something I can fish a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So once the fish kind of drop off, this is something I'll probably start playing around with a little bit more this year. I do have some California swim baits that are a line through. We really haven't talked about line throughs, but that's something you just you thread the line through. Caught some fish on these in the past. So they don't make these anymore. I got a box of these. The Optimums could be pretty good. The Boom Booms, some of those. So a line throughs are really good for smallies. I've actually caught fish small. Like I think now that I mentioned this, I actually fished Escanaba tournament quite a few years back in Michigan, and in practice I was doing really well on a line through. I did not make the adjustment in the tournament and catch them, but I was catching some really big pigs on a line through, kind of a not this color, but like a chartreuse shad in that tournament. So a line through can be a really good option with that bottom treble for smallies.
This line through a few times, and it's really good.
Yeah,
have them catch us.
I have a couple of these Dream Smashers. I've got one that's got the bottom tail hook.
Sweet.
That, and then they do make top hook versions. So here's for the people that are fans of trout colored baits. This is a good. I haven't thrown this one much. I got this one late last year, but this is one that I'll be looking to kind of do hopefully some damage with this year. This is kind of an underrated bait if you guys have not heard of the Dream Smasher baits. And then I've got some bluegill. So I've got some Matt Lures gills in a couple different colors. I don't throw these a ton, but I definitely like. I think these are probably more of a bed bait than they are a swim bait. Honestly, you can definitely catch them swimming a bait. But I think where they really excel is triggering fish on beds that won't react to other baits.
Yeah. Fisher makes one like that too, also, right, Rich?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good segue. So they also make a 4-inch gill that's actually a little bit. It's actually even a little smaller than the Matt Lures, but it's got a much better kick. Like this is a very subtle kick.
Gotcha.
The Dream Smasher actually has it's surprising. It doesn't look, but it's got kind of almost. It's got a wedge tail that's not all that different than a HUD. It's got a really good. Like when you reel it, like you can feel it. It feels like almost like a spinnerbait or a really subtle chatterbait. And I've actually got one tied on. I've been throwing it a little bit. I got this on a 734, so a 7.3 jig rod, and it's got some rash on it. I actually went to a little local pond and I did some damage. So there will be a video coming soon on this. Like, let me see if I can pull up a bit of a teaser here. Let me see if I can make this work here.
And I've taken like a mag draft to a pond a couple times and caught some pretty big ones doing it. So
yeah, let's see if I can be patient. This may be worth it. We'll see. Let me application window, share. Is it showing the video right now? Yeah?
Yep, I can see it.
All right. I don't know how the sound will come through or not.
Nothing on the sound, but
that's all right. You can wait for the real thing.
Are they on the bed here, or are they just up shallow cruising?
No, they were up feeding. There, you can see there's a little bit of a culvert here.
Yep.
And then there. And you can see there, like,
yep.
You definitely don't want to pull too hard. You want to let them eat it.
Oh, yeah.
You see my rod kind of load up.
Mm-hmm. Somebody once told me the best way to think about a swim bait bite is understanding how a fish eats a bait. Fish wants to swallow bait head first so that it can suck it down its gullet. But if it gets it from behind and you pull too fast, you're just going to pull the bait out of its mouth. So somebody once told me you want to set the hook after the second thump. And I know exactly what they meant once I started fishing swim baits, because you will feel that second thump, and it comes not very long after that first thump. And that's that fish eating it and then turning the bait all the way around so it can start shoving it down its gullet. So that's when your rod loads up, is on that second thump, and then you can set into them. I usually hit them as hard as I can still, but I'm not a very big guy. So
yeah, so that thing gets bit. I caught like 3 or 4 of them that size in about 15 minutes. It was pretty wild. Like they were just, and all you can see that thing had it choked. It's like, this is definitely a great gateway swim bait, like drug. Like this is, honestly, it's about as big as a decent sized swim jig or a bladed jig. And you can throw it on all kinds, you can throw it on a spinnerbait rod. Like, and it's a deadly little, and it's got a nice kick. You can feel it. So it gives you that confidence that, like, a lot of swim baits, like a HUD, you don't hardly feel anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's super hard to feel anything. This has got that nice, like, you can feel it kind of kicking your rod tip. It keeps you like, okay, I can feel it working. I can see why the fish would like this, and they chew it up. So, so yeah, that's a good. So yeah, Dream Smasher swim baits. Search him up. He actually, it's a guy in Minnesota. He does all them hand pours and does the colors himself. He's kind of one of those guys that, like, you got to sign up for his social media and see when he posts them, because once he posts them, they tend to like go. So that's the thing with like these swim baits. Like they're in high demand.
High demand, quick to go. Those are some of the best swim baits out there, though. I mean, you're on some of those Facebook pages that I'm in on the swim bait universe and stuff. And those guys, if one guy posts, hey, this guy's got his stuff up, every single guy who's a big fan of that brand will jump in and buy all of them. They'll be gone in less than 24 hours all the time. It seems it's got such a cult following out west too. So yeah. So I already subscribed to Dream Smasher on Instagram and stuff. But when he drops his next to the baits, I'll probably be jumping on.
Yeah. So what's up, Phil? Thanks for joining. White Whale says the 68 does kick pretty hard. Yeah, that one's got it. So the 68, for those who don't know, what a 68 special HUD is, it's a 6-inch body with an 8-inch tail on it. Yeah, so the Babe, burrito baits, 715 baits. Yeah, there's a ton of baits that we're probably not talking about. We're just kind of talking about the ones that we've got a little more personal experience with.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, there is no shortage of really good baits out there. And so we're just kind of trying to cover some of the ones that we've had luck with, in the Midwest. But there's a ton of good options out there. So don't, just because we're not talking about it doesn't mean it's not a good bait and it's not something to. So we kind of covered any other boot tails that you want to talk about before we move on to maybe the hard baits.
I think I mentioned the Rumbanus one. That's a good boot tail, but otherwise it's pretty much the Mag Draft and the Kitech varieties. I mean, I drop it down to some more finesse baits. We're not talking little stuff today. So,
yeah. So
unless somebody in the comments really wants me to dive into finesse swim baiting, pretty much.
We're not talking about finesse swim baiting. I forbid you. I forbid.
I'm a fan of forbidding that.
I have a question. So we're on Omnia Tackle.
Yes.
If you could only pick 1 or 2 Magdraft colors from Minnesota, what would you recommend? 1
second. Let me pull up Omnia.
I have it on my screen. Can you not see it?
I can't see it big enough, but I can get to the Omnia screen in like half a second. You want the 8-inch?
Well, whether it's a 6 or an 8, right? They have both, but like color, I'm looking at the 8-inch now. What would you say is the 2 colors you would pick for Minnesota?
So whiteback shad, it does that translucent thing we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's this one, right?
Yep.
So this is what you're saying for like super clear water.
Yeah.
Or clearer lakes, this is where you'd want to be throwing this bait. So where the fish get a really good look at your bait, you'd want this kind of translucent shad color.
Yep. And then,
even though we don't have any shad in our lakes, this is still a good bait.
It really is. Our fish do not care. They chase white stuff around all the time. But I would also go with IU and some really stained water. It's got that that yellow, that chartreuse flash that we look for. There's a few good options here, but if I'm going stained water, that IU color is going to be pretty good. Also, it's got that green on it, which I think there's a lot of bait fish in Minnesota with green in them, whether it's bait bass, bluegill,
Right.
sunny varieties. It mimics a lot of different forage. So yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I think honestly, like this solid white, the albino, is a really good one.
I agree with that.
So I think you could buy those two, and then maybe one that's a little darker. So I would say
that's a good one.
Like this brownie or this MB shad. Just in case you're in a lake that's like really like bullhead centric or where they're feeding on more rough fish, I would go with a slightly darker bait, and then I would go with like a bright white and then a translucent white. Like I don't think you have to get real crazy with swim bait colors.
It doesn't have to be spot on and perfect. They're chasing something that big. They want to eat it most likely, anyways.
Right. Well, let's look at the 6-inch swimmer. Ever heard of the XPS swimmer? Yes. So the XPS swimmer they don't make anymore, but super popular bait.
The old Bass Pro one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but my understanding is there's a bait called the Babe that's come out that is about as close as you will find. And that I forget what the website is. I know the Bait Man talks about it, but if you search the Babe, it's a small independent. They do the same kind of thing. They do batches and they sell them out real fast.
I've definitely heard of them. Because I remember someone talking about, it must have been an interview of some sort, someone saying that they're basically a knockoff of that XPS. And I know that XPS was the deal. Like that's the one Kennedy has like 1 million of them and is running out of, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So Takahiro and Kennedy are both. So it's 3F Fishing is who has the Babe swim bait, which is basically a remake of the I'll pull it up here. Oops. Of the old XPS swimmer that people is very sought of. So yeah, Kennedy won, I believe, the West Point tournament and has also had a lot of success. So this is the Babe. The harnessed version is the most, the one that most resembles the old XPS swimmer. I don't think the XPS swimmer ever had a kind of a belly hooked version. They've always had the treble hook harnessed version. So
how many sizes do they come in? Is it just one?
So yeah, the Babe is developed from the mold, the original Bass Shop XPS. It talks about Steve Kennedy and those guys all liking this bait. It's a 6-inch bait, 1 ounce. So this is something you can throw on a flipping stick or a jig rod. You don't need, it's kind of like, I actually have a bait that's kind of similar. I forget who made this one, but it kind of looks like this one. This one's not exactly right, but I forget who made this bait.
I've seen that one before too. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, this was like a cheaper brand.
But I've seen.
Actually, I bought these off Outlet Bait Deck Tackle, so it was something that went on clearance. It's like a company that does like northern baits and musky baits, and they made this, which is actually pretty similar. I forget what it's called. I don't think these make these anymore. This was a pretty decent bait. I know my buddy Ryan Brandt really loved these for a while. But I probably have a whole bunch of them in a box somewhere. I just don't know where they are.
I'll probably check those out. I had heard about those.
I don't think this one's this one's very rigid, so it doesn't have the kick. It's not as soft as like the Babe or the XPS swimmer. But I think what they were trying to do was replicate that with this bait.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's good. Scottsboro makes a gun. Ignite, right? We talked about that. I know the Baxter, the bait man, he just did a giveaway and got a bunch of stuff from Ignite Baits.
They make good stuff. That's what a lot of the guys fish down south in Kentucky. When I was down there, they were all throwing Ignite.
Yeah.
This one, jig head, throwing it on ledges and letting this thing and just dragging it basically. I mean, it's a steady wind, guys, but it's still just dragging on the bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about some hard baits. So to me, once the paddle tail bite starts to die, like the Hud bite, and you can catch fish on paddle tails all year round, but that's like when the water temp starts to get in the low 60s, that's when most people agree that that's when glide baits start to shine. So let's move into hard baits. So do you have any glides, any hard baits?
I don't yet.
That's right. Need somebody else on the show.
Thing I'm like so amped to get into this summer. It's almost time to start throwing them, so I'm gonna go pick some up later this week.
Yeah. So one of the hard baits that I first started throwing that actually had some size to it is the old True Tungsten 7-inch gill.
I remember you showing this on my
stream. This is not a glide bait. This is more of a swimming swim bait. So, but this is like the first big hard bait I ever caught fish on. And so where this excels is fishing it fairly fast. It's not like a real, you want to like swim it pretty hard and almost like a poor man's bull shad, I guess, or a poor man's bull gill. A lot of guys still like these. Mm-hmm. They go for pretty big money. This does have a pretty good following on it. I've got 3 of them left. I'm actually trading one that I have for another hard gill. I'm going to get a snack size gill.
Nice.
So this is a bait that has kind of got me started with the bait. This is the first time I started out really playing with big hard baits was this. And it's not real huge, but it's fairly substantial.
Yeah.
It's fairly heavy, especially when you've got the balls in it. So this one's kind of unique. It has I don't have my pliers, but there's a little pin right here in the belly that you can pull that out, and then it's got 2 or 3 tungsten balls that you can take in and out to change the sink rate of this bait. I think most people agree that fishing it with a couple balls in it and fishing it fairly fast is the way that this performs the best and where people do well with it. I was talking to what's the guy's name? Jacob Wall on Instagram. I saw this sitting on his front deck. He makes baits. He throws big swim baits, and I was like, he had this sitting on his deck in one of his Instagram pictures. And I chatted to him about it. So that's an interesting bait. Along that same, so yeah, as far as glide baits, I definitely have caught a few fish on the River to Sea 168s, which is kind of like, depending on who you talk to, if these are real glide baits or not. These are kind of like starter kits. I mean, these are really glorified jerk baits.
They are.
They're not real big, but I definitely caught some pond fish on these. I've caught a few fish in lakes. I kind of got this light perch color, which I don't think is like way off from that light trout color. And then I've kind of got, I don't know if it's like some kind of IU or something, or Wagasaki or something. It's a couple, but these are good. Entry level, great for smallies, great for largies. If you don't know what's in the lake and you just want to fish, a 168. Now these are pretty cheap. I think they're only like $15 to $17 or something for a 168. They're reasonably priced. And then you can definitely jump up to the 200 size. That's which is quite a bit bigger, even though we're only talking 32 millimeters, which is just over an inch. Size-wise, there's a big difference.
Yeah.
In the amount of mass you're throwing when you go to the 200.
It's thicker.
Yeah. Oops. What the heck?
My phone and my computer and somebody texted.
So this is I'm taking it out. It's gonna get in the boat. But there's it's just kind of interesting color. It's kind of a translucent, but yeah, it's got some color to it. A little kind of I like this. Kind of got a red fin. It's kind of got a little red in the chin, a little chartreuse. Kind of got some kill spots on it, something for the fish to zero in on and hit.
Do you believe in that old school theory about red?
I actually do. I like on top waters. I really do like red hooks on my front hook.
Front hook is a red hook, and it seems that I T-bone jerk baits more than anything. So
I think to about 6 feet, it plays a role.
Yes.
Over 6 feet, I think they start to not be able to see the red, and then I don't think it matters. So DT4s, maybe DT6s, wake baits, jerk baits that aren't super deep, and top waters. I think red hooks on the front hook.
I agree.
The second car you showed us is the best producer in my area.
when I was a kid, that red hook theory was super, super popular and a big gimmick in the industry. And I remember everything was red hook sticks or red weights. And I believe it to an extent. And I agree, 6 feet is probably about the max that I'll throw something with a red hook. And after that, it just doesn't seem to matter.
Let's see, let's make some comments here. Bass Pro Shops glide bait. I haven't tried the Bass Pro Shops. So I can't speak to that. I know there's a handful of other glide baits that are one that a lot, and I've just got this one, and I guess I got it tied on. It's not in my box. So I've thrown this one a little bit. This one, as far as glide baits go, is pretty cheap. It's a pretty decent sized bait. It's a little bit bigger than the S-Waver. So it's not quite as big as the 200, but it's bigger than the 168. So trending in the right direction. And I like the way this looked. I don't really think the water temp or the watercolor and everything was right the day I threw it. This is the day I should have been throwing probably a boot tail. This is the Bait Sanity Antidote Glide. And I think they're right around $25. Gotcha. So for a bait this size, and the reviews on it are quite glowing.
Is it like
this is a good one? So they have 2 versions. And I got the slow sink. They have a faster version and a slow sink. I went with this one because based on what I read is that the Arashi is actually sinks a little faster, right? So this is another bait that's reasonably priced.
Yeah.
This one it sinks a little. I know these sink a little faster and a little bit more of a faster action, a little tighter glide. So I wanted to go with this one being a little slower and a little wider glide, just so I'd have a little more variation in the swim baits I have. So they do have 2 different versions. This is the only one I've got so far. It comes with, I think I probably need to change the hooks on these. They don't look super great. The one thing, the nice about the Arashi, it does have the free flow, the free turning hook hangers.
Yeah.
There's a nice feature on that. So these are a little more expensive. I think the Arashi is like $37, $38.
Yeah, it's about that. I think retail price.
So, but this is a super popular color for the Arashi that a lot of guys say, if you only get one color, get this. And this looks like literally nothing in the lake, but this goes back to just, sometimes they're not super obnoxious, but the fairly bright kind of crazy colors are some of the best producers for swim baits and glide baits because you just really want the drawing flower.
Yep. They're curious. They want to come up and chase it, and they want to see what it is. Yeah. They don't know what it is. Yeah. So I would agree. The more flash, the more neon colors you have on some of these glide baits, I think some of the ones that are producing the best that I've seen are really, really flashy, and that's definitely the thing.
Yeah. So there's the Arashi next to the 200 S-Waver. So
yeah.
Just a touch smaller. We're talking fairly similar class baits. The one thing I noticed about the Bait Sanity versus the Arashi is the Bait Sanity has a slightly narrower profile on the bait.
Oh yeah, it does.
Not quite as meaty in the midsection. So it's just as tall, but not quite as wide. So
what's that goes on?
Yeah, so for the glides, when we get up into the ones that are a little closer to the 200, so like the Bait Sanity, the Arashi, the 200 Arashi, I'm throwing on a 795 Dobbins. And I have the Champion, but only because there was no Fury when I bought this. So if I broke this or was buying now, I would probably go with the Fury because I don't think I don't need the sensitivity for a glide bait. I mean, they're going to just absolutely rip it out of your hands. You're probably going to see half the strikes. I would say if you're new to it, I wouldn't probably spend the money on this. I don't know what the weight difference is, but I can't. That's all that. And then I have a 300 swim bait reel.
Oh, the 300E old one?
Yeah. Which they don't make anymore.
I bet you can find it on eBay though somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those old Shimanos are great. But yeah, I'll be getting a 300 size spool reel for my 795. When I start throwing glide baits, I don't think you can downsize the reel on that.
Yeah, I heard about the Shine Glide. The Shine Glide is, I forget who, is that Savage Gear makes the Shine Glide? Is that right?
Yeah. Justin. So that's again my team partner talking about an event.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say baits that I've heard about for entry level. So I would think you cannot go wrong with the River to Sea one. I mean, especially if you're brand new and you're just like dipping your toe in the water. I think you will not find an argument. This is probably the #1 bait to go for. It gets bit. It's big enough. It does have a frame one drawing power. It doesn't break the bank. You can get 5 or 6 of them for less than $100. So absolutely #1 starter is the S-Waver 168. If you're going up from there, I think you can look at the S-Waver 200. You can look at the Molix that just came out recently. You can look at the Arashi Glide. You can look at the Bait Sanity. You can look at the what's the Jackal one we just said?
We just said it.
Yeah, the Shine Glide.
Oh yeah.
So those are I would say the most popular ones. There are definitely some that are also affordable, a little more obscure. But those, there's 4, 5, 6 baits, and those all range between 25 and 40 bucks. That next round. So you kind of got the S-Waver 168, which is less than 20. And then you got about 5 or 6 baits that are fairly well known, and most people will say those are good baits in that $25 to $40 range. And then things get a little crazy and out of hand at that point.
Yeah. And
there are some really good baits. They get a lot more expensive. So if you're going to start buying those, you want to make sure that you're committed and you're actually going to throw them. So
what's the most expensive you have right now?
Expensive bait I have?
Yeah, you don't have like any Roman maids or anything crazy like that.
No, I would think my most expensive is this JSJ snack size trout.
Gotcha.
I think I've had this one a long time. This one's actually numbered number 239. So this is a slightly different style bait. So this is a good segue. So we kind of talked about glides. Before we maybe go to that, right? So you get into the depths 250s. You get into the high-powered herrings. You get into the shizzle. I mean, there's like a million of them. And I don't know about them, but like if you're really that interested, you're probably in the next level of swim baits than we're going to talk about in this stream. Go join Swimbait Freaks. Go join Swimbait Universe on Facebook, and they're probably going to help you and take you to that next level.
You guys know about Swimbait that just I didn't even.
Yeah, they're crazy. That's like all they do, right? So like both Eric and I are tournament guys that have an interest, a passion, and want to get better at swim baits and dabble with swim baits. And if you're really like that nutty to the point where you're buying depths 250s, then you're past us. So, so once you leave glide baits, then I would say the hard baits that are more the swimming baits. So like your triple trouts, your bull shads, baits like this, they're typically double jointed or triple jointed baits. They're more of a swimming kind of stop, kind of more like speed type baits. So there's different versions out there, and but in general, that's kind of the other class of hard swim baits. And some of them are gill shaped, like the True Tungsten I held up earlier. They're kind of really, if you think back to probably where they mostly started, like if you think about the old Stabile Magic Swimmers, which are like a great herring imitation bait and things like that. These are kind of downsized versions of that. I think these bigger baits kind of spawn from that and taking that to a next level. And so that's when I think these tend to shine a little more when your water temps get up closer to 70. You start to get more heavy post spawn, and then you're kind of looking for more fish's metabolism a little higher. You can fish these baits a little faster. Yeah, I think this stack size trout, I want to say if you tried to buy one now, it'd be about $70.
Yeah.
Which when I got this, I thought that was like $1,000.
Sometimes it feels like $70 is the same as $1,000.
Yeah. So this is a cool bait. I've definitely caught some fish on this one, messing around with this. So the two biggest baits that I've caught fish on are this and that True Tungsten gill that I showed. I've caught fish on both of them. And I would agree. I've got like the 4-inch and the 5-inch hard gills, and I've never really caught fish on them. I've caught more fish on that 7-inch gill than I have the smaller ones. So yeah, I'm starting to slowly get into the bigger swim baits. I would say another, like if you're looking for something that's a little more entry level and kind of gateway, if you can find some Black Dog Baits shell crackers, the G2s, they're not real big baits. This is kind of a wake bait, but these are a good little swim bait. Get bit really good around the bluegill spawns. A good kind of gateway bait. It's not super big. It's probably comparable to that. It's a little bit bigger than that Dream Smasher.
Yeah.
But good bait.
Are you like the same rod as a Dream Smasher, or are you?
I would say yeah. This would definitely be on a jig rod or a heavy crankbait rod.
I didn't know if you. I know some guys like softer rods because of the trebles. I don't. With these big swim baits, I think you still want that stout rod. It seems like.
Yeah, no, I definitely think. I mean, these got like number 2s, number 1s on there. I mean, they're pretty big treble bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe even a yeah. So, yeah. So those are some of my favorite baits that I've been playing around with. I think kind of now. I guess. Did you have anything else to add on the hard baits?
Other than just, it feels like a big jerk bait, and I'm excited to start trying them this year. I think I'm going to try the, I don't think you mentioned it, the iSlide 135 from HellaBass. It looks like a good one. I'll try that Molix one, and then the S-Waver I'll mess with a little bit. So I'm picking those up soon and actually going to start throwing them in the next week here.
Yeah, I bought this baby bull shad, and I didn't realize how small this thing was. Like, this thing is... This is like a spinning rod swim bait. I didn't like if I would have known how small. Actually, I think I put it on my Christmas list, and like my wife bought it for me or something. But I didn't realize how tiny. This thing is like a lipless crankbait.
Oh wow!
It's just like the most adorable little thing. So if you want to pretend like, here it is against the G2.
Okay, yeah.
And the G2 would eat this thing. Like, this thing is the same profile as like a red eye shad, just a little bit longer with a cute little brush tail, like a little.
Huh.
But like, this is like, I guess, pond magic. Like, but like this, I don't really consider this. This was more likely to go in my crankbait box than it is to go in my swim bait box.
Sorry about that.
So I would not recommend this for swim bait.
Tom Floria is messaging me. So.
Yeah. So the other thing we did, so weight baits, like the shell cracker, you can crank this down, you can fish it as a wake bait. So I don't have a lot of wake baits. I am interested in getting like an MS Slammer or possibly a rat to start playing around with. But I do not have those. But that's another category that we really didn't dive into.
Yeah, I was saying I need to try the Spro Rat size 50. So I'll add it to the dream list.
Yeah, I think talking about gateway baits, I think most people will say that Spro Rat is a pretty good bait for the money if you want to try rats without breaking the bank.
Yeah.
So let's talk about.
I've heard about that one a few times, so I think that one's probably a good one to definitely gateway.
Yeah. So I definitely have some like baits that are on my wish list. So once my motor gets fixed back here, and I know what that's going to cost me, then I'll probably take myself off my bait freeze. But things that are definitely on my list is, and thanks to everybody that's on here before I forget, like we're over 30 viewers, which I think is a new record for me, and we're definitely growing every week. So I appreciate the people that are ride or die and joining every Wednesday. I don't know about next. It might be Thursday. It was birthday next Wednesday, so it may not be a Wednesday night stream, but we will do a stream next week. So just stay tuned on that. But so thanks to everybody that's participating and hanging out. So once I know what that's going to cost me, and I take my self-imposed bait ban off.
Yeah.
So things that I plan on getting, I definitely plan on getting. I wouldn't mind getting some of these babes, honestly. in the harness version. I could see myself getting some of those. Those are on my list. I want to get some more 8-inch mag drafts in a couple different colors. Let me see if I can see if this doesn't get too. Let me see here. I want to share. Okay. I want to be able to. This might get weird. Are you looking at Tackle Warehouse now?
Yeah, I just was.
Okay. So going a little more expensive, I've heard good things about this AB Toolers Homicide Glide. And this is definitely getting a little pricier. So this is when we start to get into the big boy swim baits. I've heard the 9-inch is kind of the sweet spot, which brings it right at $100. One thing cool about these is they come with a tail hook. I don't know if you guys can see that. That doesn't really show up well. But it basically has a hook for a tail hook, a belly hook, and then it comes with a hook on the nose. And so going back to that theory that so many fish like crush these baits from the head, a nose hook. But I think there's no reason that we can't hang, you put a split ring, we can't be hanging treble hooks on the front of our glide baits.
Yeah.
So that might be something for all of us to experiment with, whether it's S-Waver 200, the Arashi, any of these baits. If you're getting a lot of fish that are just pounding your bait and you're not hooking up, try putting a split ring with a drop treble hook on the nose. We talked about this, but the bull shad is definitely on my radar.
Yeah.
The 4x4, bull gill maybe a little bit, but I think what I'd rather have is like up here would be like a 6-inch bull shad painted like a bluegill versus actually getting, and so those run at like $50 to $60. So I think a 6-inch bull shad is a really good, and I think I'd want a slow sink. So the bull shad definitely on my wish list. Mike Buka is a super cool guy. He has some really great videos. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, definitely follow Bull Shad on Facebook. He goes live. He shows you how he hand tunes all his baits before he sends them out. He shows you how to like adjust your baits. There's a lot of cool content there. We talked about the Babe. That Shine Glide is on my list. The
Evergreen International Bream Slide swim bait. That one looks. It's about $70.
So this is on
that one, yeah.
The Bream Slide. Yeah, somebody mentioned this. Like, yeah, these baits look cool. I know a lot of guys say that bluegill-shaped glide baits and bluegill-shaped swim baits, they draw the strikes, but sometimes their hookups aren't as good because of the tall profile.
I can
a lot of times. So that I would say that's the only knock I've heard on these type of baits.
Gotcha.
One that a lot of guys say that is pretty good, which is a lower profile, is this Gantrel. So it's got a little bit of that bluegill shape, but it's a little squattier. So for this one, I think these ones are $40. This is definitely a bait if you really feel like you need a bluegill style glide bait. This is a very popular one that a lot of people talk really highly of. I think either one of those bluegills or that carp pattern would be really good for the Midwest fishing. I'm not a big fan of baby bass. So
I like that farm Matt Gill or that RT Spawn Gill looks good too. Both of those look really good.
Yeah. So those are baits on my list. What you got? Anything else on your?
I mentioned it before. The iSlide 135 is like right up there on the top of that list right now. It's only a $45. I shouldn't say only, but it's only a $45 glide bait. But the 135 size looks really, really good. It's looks a little more narrow than some of our other bluegill glide baits, but it's got those gill colors like the GLX Sunshine gill. And part of the reason I don't have these is that GLX Sunshine gill has been out of stock for like a month and a half now.
That's why you just got to order them and just get in line. You can't wait till they come back in stock.
Well, you can't even click on the quantity right now, so I'll have different colors. But those look sweet. They seem like a really good gill. I mean, I throw a lot of other Mega Bass products, so might as well jump in line. The Molix glide bait looks really good, though. Also, it's smaller in profile, but has some of those gill colors also. The MX bluegill color on that Molix looks really, really money post spawn to me.
Yeah, so this is the one that Carl Jacobson has been pimping lately. Yep. And they only come in a few colors. Honestly, as weird as it sounds, I think the trout would be the best one for.
With the green back?
Just in general, I think that trout color, you'd be surprised, would get bit anywhere. And I think that's just.
Yeah. Now look
from what I hear guys talk about that really catch and fish baits, you want that that brighter color. I think that just will prove to be the better. Even though if there's not a trout within 100 miles where you're fishing, I still think that trout's probably the best all-around color in that lineup.
They don't know what a trout is. They just see flash. They're eating it. I mean, yeah. I
mean, you drop a goldfish in a lake, they may never seen goldfish, but they're going to eat the damn thing because they can see it a mile away.
That honestly, in Minnesota, I think sometimes that's why chartreuse, like orange or like fire craw works so well in some of our lakes because I've seen plenty of lakes with goldfish in them. I know it's crazy, but to us, it probably doesn't sound crazy. To some of these other people, it might. That is a really good tip, though, the nose hook thing you brought up that White Whale's talking about. I hadn't thought of that, but it's like a big ledge spoon. Guys will add a treble hook at the top of the ledge spoon by the line tie, and they'll catch those fish that ate the spoon but didn't get the hook on the bottom, if you will. So.
Yeah, I think you just got to make sure that you're not putting. You want to probably a slightly smaller, like whatever. I'm not sure what size treble hook this is on the Arashi Glide. But I would go with a slightly smaller than this on the nose. I'd probably go with like a number 2 or something like, because this is probably like a 1/0. I'd probably go with like a number 2 because you don't want to disrupt the weight too much. So you want to go with something a little smaller. You still want to go with a pretty thick wire hook because when you hook a swimbait fish, you're going to horse them in. You're not going to be playing them. So you want to hook up there if you're going to try it, not so big. And then I don't think you don't need it on this bait. Like these little, you want to be throwing at least a 7+ inch bait before you even worrying about a nose hook. So and that may even be borderline whether you really need it at that point. But if you're starting to throw those 8 and 9 inch glide baits, then definitely a nose hook is probably something to really look at. I agree. I think we all need an MS slammer in our lives for sure. I've seen some guys in Vermont catch some really big fish out of kayaks, and if they eat them in Vermont, there's no reason they wouldn't eat them in Minnesota or Wisconsin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the Babe, they only make about 1,000 a year of those swimbaits. Tom Mix was able to jump right on him and get some of the harness version. Kudos to you, Tom. I was on my bait restriction, so I resisted the temptation. One thing, whether hard baits or glide baits, don't be afraid to sauce them up with some scent.
Oh, man, you bring up a really good point. Yeah. I think – did you listen to the BTL with Byron last week? Byron Velvick?
I did. Yep.
He calls it buttering toast.
Yeah, that's what he did when he was out on the one on E1 on Clear Lake. Yeah.
And the reason he does it makes a lot of sense to me. It's not so much the scent; it's the ability to set the hook, because that bait will slide through the fish's mouth to the hook. So, I could totally see lubing up this side and this side on this mag draft, and that would definitely make a difference with setting the hook and stuff. So.
Yeah, and if you got followers, it's definitely not going to hurt your chances of converting it.
Yeah. It's better than sunscreen or a Purell. That I've seen that make a big difference before. Guys who like wash their hands right before they launch for a tournament, and the first thing they do is pick up like a flipping bait and put it in their hand to flip with it, and they just use Purell in the bathroom, and I mean, it seems to make a difference to me. So I don't see why adding lube or whatever kind of cream. I don't know what brand. I forgot what brand Byron was saying he was using, but that kind of stuff makes like it can't.
Yeah, he was using like a smelly jelly or some kind of something like that.
Yeah.
I know the guy that was on Smallmouth Crush, guy from the Carolinas. I forget what his name is. It's like Dream Catchers NC. And he's a big believer in setting up his baits as well. So I definitely think, when you're fishing big swim baits, it's kind of like you're hunting. Like you're not trying to catch, 50 fish a day. You're going for the alpha fish. These are the smartest fish. You want to take the time to do all the right things. Yeah, it was Austin. You want to do all the things. You want to take the time to line up for the good casts. You want to make sure your knots are good. You want to make sure you have good line. You want to make sure, you do everything you can. You want to come into these areas quiet. You want to get the angles on the cast. Don't rush it. Like think of like hunting a big buck and getting everything right, that you're only going to get the right cast a few times a day, and you want to make sure they count. So change your mentality a little bit, throwing big baits, and that's probably going to help you understand and get you there a little quicker.
Yeah. And another thing with that, like hunting, you never put your guard down with these big baits because, it might be a long day of throwing this big, heavy-weighted bait around, but if you put it by a dock or the brush pile or the top of the hump and that fish is there and he hasn't seen anything worth eating like that all day, he's going to eat. Or she's going to eat, I should say. Usually she. But you got to be ready because you may go 4 hours. I've caught my limit before in the morning, put the big bait in my hand, and gone 4 hours before my next bite. But the next bite's the kicker I was looking for. So it is hunting. I would agree with that. It's hunting for that one big alpha, female or male, depending on what species we're targeting. Here we're targeting on bass.
And often, when other baits are in the lull and it gets tough, a lot of times that's when a swim bait will shine. So like when you've got that like midday sun, you've got that midday lull, you've got the high skies, you're kind of between normal bite windows, that's a good time to break out the big bait, especially in a team tournament. And I think we talked a little bit about this on IG, right? Like if you can be in a team tournament situation, it's a little easier for one of you, I hate to say this, but swing for the fence, right? But like bring out the big wood or the big bait or the big paddle tail. The guy up front can keep, flipping a jig, throwing a beaver, throwing a spinner bait, whatever. If you got, a few decent fish in the well, and then the person in the back can definitely, take the risks and go for a bigger fish. So
yeah, absolutely. 1 second. I'm going to move inside to where there's more light here. Warehouse order going out from Arsenal. What up? Dan's here too. We're still on right now.
Oh, Dan.
Fishing's here.
What up, boys?
What's up, Dan?
Hey, Rich, how you doing?
Not too bad. It's good to see you start to grow back your flow here. That's looking good.
Probably gonna go bye soon once it gets a little too warm outside. So how was the swim bait talk, guys?
It's going good.
Pretty good. What's your 2 cents? What's your favorite swim bait?
Oh God, he's trying to get me into more swim baits. So
I'm trying to convert.
I mean, I got a bunch of mag drafts and a couple boom booms. That's about all I throw for swim baits, and then obviously the tactical minnows from Arsenal. I use those as trailers mainly for swim jigs and chatter baits. So that's my bread and butter is a swim jig. But
ooh, White Whale has a good point. Does anyone flip a big bait into a bass bed? Yes, I do. I did that the other day when I was fun fishing by myself. But I know guys on my day 2 at regional down at Gunnersville, he had a couple fish on the bed. He flipped a swim bait in there. He didn't get him to bite, but I could see how it would work because it's that big obtrusive profile and whatnot.
Do you guys?
In a lot of cases, you even want to potentially have a big swim bait without hooks in it.
Yeah.
Just to get them fired up for two reasons. One, a lot of times fish are bedding in an area where it's hard to get a giant bait with hooks in it in there, right? Because there's like a log or there's lily pads or there's this grass, right? They don't tend to like spawn in like wide open areas, right? So one, it's hard to get a big bait in there with treble hooks on it. And in a tournament, especially, now I guess if you're fun fishing, it doesn't matter. But you don't. The last thing you'd want to do is foul hook them.
Right.
And you hook a lot of swimbait fish on the outside of the mouth. So if you're really in a bedding tournament and you want to have a big bait, I would actually suggest fishing one without hooks or with a top hook to use that as your aggravator, because you get them all fired up and then throw the tube in there, throw the jig in there, throw whatever in there. That would be my 2 cents, because I know on day 2 at Gunner's, what you're talking about, I had a big fish on a bed and I couldn't get him with any of the other stuff. He was in such a shallow, gnarly spot, and I didn't want to take the time to like take hooks off a bait, but I wish I would have had a big bait that I could have got in there, because there was no way I could have got a big swim bait in there with hooks on it. He was just out like dragging the mat right over the top of him. He was just in a bad spot. So,
do you guys consider dark sleepers to be a swim bait? Do you, Rich?
I would consider that to be a finesse swim bait or a jig. Yeah,
because I fish it like a jig, but I have caught fish on the retrieve on that thing too, swimming it. But
sure.
My biggest smallmouth, my personal best, which isn't terribly big, a 5.26. That came on a dark sleeper last year. And then I have a couple Dream Smasher swim baits. I don't know if you guys talked about those at all today.
Yeah, we did.
We did.
I see the logo behind your head actually right there. So
we showed some footage of me catching one from a pond the other day, actually.
Oh, sweet. Nice. How big was it? How big was the Dream Smasher?
I didn't weigh it. It was just a 4-inch gill.
Okay.
Yeah, so you see that earlier. That's this one.
That so do you throw that on beds? Is it I've heard it's a good bed bait. I haven't caught anything on that one yet though.
It absolutely should be a good. I haven't had it in the right situation. I'm hoping to go tomorrow. I'm gonna have that on a rod. I'm gonna have a glide, and then I'm gonna have a couple bed fishing baits, because I think things are probably happening right now where we live. So I'm gonna duck out of the work early tomorrow and get on the lake and look for some. So I'm gonna throw those 2 swim baits as I kind of cruise down the bank and try to find a couple bigs tomorrow. So that'll be kind of my 1-2 punch tomorrow.
All right, cool. Sounds good to me.
Since I wore them out on a tactical minnow on the back of a bladed jig last weekend.
Saw that, by the way. Dan's a fan of that.
You should share it somewhere.
Where am I looking?
That's the reference spot right there.
Really? That's where you have to look? Oh, that's weird.
No, you look at the camera.
Well, then why are you telling me to look at the reference spot at the point?
This is just a normal day at Dan's house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Dan doesn't understand technology, obviously.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
He can build websites, but he's like a software guy. Hardware, no good. That's bad news.
However, he does know how to video edit. So if you guys haven't, go check out Arsenal Fishing's YouTube page, and there's going to be all kinds of videos to come. Lots of
as long as you only want content once a quarter.
Yeah, I have hard drives full.
If you're looking for high quality content that's not going to overwhelm you.
Yes.
With competition, that's
the perfect analysis of what I do with my fishing content. I literally have hard drives full of episodes. It's stupid. I don't have the time between Arsenal Fishing. The company is just doing really well right now. I think most companies though right now are doing really well just because all the shops were closed, so everyone had to do online purchasing. So, I mean, I've been crushing it, man. It's been great to see all the orders and support lately. It's good.
Yeah. So White Whale's asking, Dream Smasher, 100% domestic company. He hand pours the baits in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not saying maybe a few components or something maybe doesn't come, but yeah, it's made here for sure. So
cool.
Good.
That's the way we like it. Not always, but those Japanese baits are pretty cool.
Spendy, but cool.
But I like that it's a Minnesota company, so I'm gonna have to pick up a bunch of those Dream Smashers now.
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, I don't have any, but I've definitely seen. If you guys, what is it? SB John Boat channel? Is that what the channel is? He's been throwing the weedless stream, something like that. I forget what the guy's name is, but he's
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any of them, but they're weedless swim baits that ever fished on like 8/0 beast hooks. So he has like a 6-inch weedless stream smasher that's been doing really good. I don't have any of those yet, but I will be fixing that soon. So
nice, very nice. Do you guys have any more questions, guys? Just curious, random stuff, things I didn't cover, things about rigging. Now that I have better light again.
Oh, is that why you came out here? Because
Yeah.
lighting went
It
completely
got dark. You said your light doesn't.
So we'll hang on for a few more minutes in case anybody's got any questions. Definitely make sure you guys follow Erik at Great Lakes Gaff. Got his information on the stream here on Instagram. Definitely expect to be seeing some good content from him on the IG. Follow me on Instagram. Definitely check me out, HellaBass. I usually post several times per week with some unique content that's not on my YouTube channel. On Instagram as well. Snap or no snap? I would say snap. Like I like the
white whale. Sorry, he's taking off, but he was good.
Thanks.
Good chatting with.
Yeah, absolutely, white whale. Thanks. I like these decoy egg snaps. Those are my go-to snaps for glides and hard baits in general. How about you?
Usually I'm kind of one of those people that if it comes with a snap, I assume it was designed with a snap. And if not, I'll go snapless. Exceptions, I'll probably always throw a snap on a glide bait this year. I never throw a snap on a soft body swim bait. It's just not ideal. It's just going to get hung up on lily pads and grass and all that kind of stuff if you throw a snap on a regular paddle tail.
Oh, cool. Well, I usually try to keep these for right about 90 minutes so that my wife doesn't go too crazy and I get my kids to bed. So I appreciate everybody that was on here tonight. I think I'm actually going to throw out a third bonus video this week. So there might be one dropping Friday as well. But otherwise, I'm going to go out fishing tomorrow and hopefully have some bedding action coming up on the channel real soon. So yeah, posting weekly videos, weekly streams, Wednesday nights, maybe Thursday next week, but mostly Wednesday nights. I appreciate you coming on, Erik. Thanks. Look for more content. Definitely got some more guests lined up. It's going to be kind of a mix of anglers like Erik and like Tin Horse Monty and other guys and content creators, and then bait makers. I've got some other bait makers lined up that want to interview them and tell their story, kind of like we did with Woody Outdoors. So that's what's on the docket. I appreciate everybody that has tuned in. And until next time, we're here to help you catch more bass and suck less.
See you guys. We're losing stuff.